In the United States, a tornado lands at Chicago O'Hare Airport.
Authorities cancel hundreds of flights, advising passengers to take shelter. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. ICC's appeals court to release decisions on drug war probe next week. Marcos administration launches green lane queues to boost Philippine investment. Washington and Beijing top officials to meet on sideline of ASEAN talk. The Department of Science and Technology unveils a bioprinting lab in collaboration with a firm to build in Western Visayas. JD Mahinay tells us more.
The Department of Science and Technology, or DOST, together with Pharma-Gallen X Innovations Incorporated, unveiled a bioprinting laboratory in Haro, Iloilo. The facility is under the agency's Business Innovation through SNT for Industry, or BIST program. BIST program aims to boost local companies' capability in research and development. Gallen X provided 10.75 million pesos for a three-dimensional printing technology used in the firm's studies. According to DOST Chief Renato Solidum Jr., that the laboratory's successful establishment proves the synergy between industry and government toward advanced cutting-edge research in the country. The firm's research study claims that it will help to provide the way for advancement in regenerative medicine. DOST adds that the facility also pave for academic and research institution for laboratory analysis. JD Mahinay reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Supreme Court en banc turns down 3 petitions filed during the COVID-19 pandemic. These petitions question the regulations issued by the Interagency Task Force of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF. The Tribune unanimously voted to dismiss the consolidated petitions during its previous en banc session on July 11. Among those questioned was regulation that required all public and private firms to settle on-site work employees to be vaccinated against COVID-19 or else subject themselves to mandatory RT-PCR testing every 2 weeks at their own expense. The court noted that the petitions were dismissible for violating the doctrine of the hierarchy of courts.
A transport group announces the staging of a 3-day nationwide strike on President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s second State of the Nation address, or SONA, set for July 24. Manibela says it will hold a strike to protest against the government's public utility vehicle modernization program. Manibela Chairman Mar Valbuena notes that transport group Piston will also join the strike. Public Service Network says that Manibela projects around 300,000 of its members to participate in the demonstration.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. expects the South Commuter Railway Project, or SCRP, to benefit about 800,000 commuters daily. Elijah Villanueva has the details.
With the signing of these 3 contract packages that cover a total of around 14.9 kilometers of at-grade and railway viaduct structures, we will be a step closer to our goal of serving around 800,000 commuters daily by 2029.
The President holds a signing of contract packages SO1, SO3A, and SO3C for the South Commuter Railway project. He emphasizes his administration's commitment to a more efficient public transportation system for every Filipino. 3,000 job opportunities are also expected to come from the SCRP. President Marcos acknowledges the disturbances that the project will cause for the informal settlers. He seeks their patience and understanding for the benefit of the next generations. The President expresses his deep gratitude to the Asian Development Bank and the Japan International Cooperation Agency for their help in actualizing the project. Elijah Villanueva for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Appeals Chamber of ICC is due to give its decision on the Philippines' plea against the probe on the war on drugs. Vin Pascua reports.
The International Criminal Court, or ICC, says that the judgment on the country's appeal against the investigation into the war on drugs during the Duterte administration is set to be released on July 18. ICC previously halted its probe into the anti-drug campaign last November 2021. Early this year, the court's pre-trial chamber greenlighted the resumption of the probe. On March 2023, the Marcos administration appealed to suspend the ruling and reverse the decision through Solicitor General Menardo Guevara. The Marcos administration emphasized that ICC had no jurisdiction over the country. The ICC's appeal chamber, however, denied Manila's request to suspend the probe last March 27. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. then announced that the country will be disengaging from any communication with the ICC as response to the country's rejection. Data shows that the Duterte administration's war on drugs claimed estimately 6,000 lives. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Marcos administration launches green lanes that expedites the processes required to implement investments in the country.
I am confident that the green lanes will pave the way for the realization of many pledges that we have had, including those that I have personally received whilst abroad, ensuring that they will bear fruit for our people and our nation.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signs Executive Order Number 18, which is a part of his administration's 8-point agenda. He emphasizes the vast potential of the reform for attracting foreign investments and also creating an environment that encourages business growth. The president also highlights the introduction of e-Invest during the signing of the policy. e-Invest is an online platform that expedites the processing of investment applications. It will also grant provisional permits to operate, allowing investors to start operations while awaiting full approval. Philippines and France aim government to deal for procurement activities. Bernadette Manuel for the details.
Manila and Paris are negotiating for a possible financing agreement. This comes after the recent visit of the Philippine delegation to Europe. Board of Investment or BOI officials say the Department of Finance and the French government aim to use the possible deal for procurement activities of the country's government agencies, including the Philippine Coast Guard. BOI notes that the deal will provide funding for procuring equipment such as vessels under the PCG project. Prior to this, French shipbuilder OSHA aims to invest 1.5 billion pesos worth of shipyard facilities in the country. BOI officials say that OSHA asserted its investment in the country last month amid the first decade milestone of the Philippines-France Joint Economic Commission. In 2021, during the 9th edition of the Joint Economic Commission, OSHA intended to invest in the Philippines by building a shipyard that said could generate 600 jobs. While in October 2022, the French firm signed a letter of commitment of its investments in the country. Bernadette Manuel reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The French defense manufacturer Naval Group is keen on helping the Philippine Navy to modernize the Subic Bay naval base to accommodate submarines. The Navy has announced Subic Bay to be the location for its submarine force. The plans include docks for multiple submarines and surface ships, maintenance yards, logistics depots, and a submarine force training center. Naval Group will also assist in the training of maintenance specialists. They will establish partnerships with local industries for know-how and technology transfer. The AFP modernization program aims to acquire 2 to 3 submarines to enhance the country's territorial defense, especially in the area of the West Philippine Sea. The Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, assures that the OFW Pass will be free of charge. The DMW mobile app will also be freely available for all Filipinos working abroad. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has directed these to be free in acknowledgement of the sacrifices and contributions of the modern-day heroes. Once the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, approves the app, it will be launched alongside the OFW Pass. The current focus of the DMW is educating OFWs about digital certificate.
Coming up, Thai Prime Minister hopeful PETA fails to secure the majority vote. Ukrainian President Zelensky hails security victory after G7 vows support. And U.S. President Biden arrives in Finland after NATO summit meeting. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
Ano kaya ang meron sa ating bansa para kanilang mahalin at balik-balikan ito? You're also called Isaac Pusong Binoy.
I realized my talent here in the Philippines. Dol, patola, upot, kalabasa.
We will let you taste 3 food items with sabaw.
Bakit walang kanin? If I'm gonna write a story about my life, I think Philippines will be number 1.
Kung ang ibang lahi ay tila napapa I love you Pinas, ang Pinoy kaya, mag-reality check tayo. Pogi ba ako?
Konti lang.
Ano to, networking?
Monday, first screening.
Libre ang sinihan para sa mga seniors kada Lunes.
Ganda! Hindi ikaw, si Lydia.
Oo naman.
Paano ba manligaw ngayon, ha?
Text mo na.
Nakalimutan ko ang pangalan mo. Pwede ba kitang tawagin Akin? Flowers for you.
Kapag tinanggap ko bang bulaklak na yan, aalis ka na.
Ang sakit ng katawan ko. Araw-araw ba naman akong nahuhulog sa'yo?
Parang kakaiba ata ang pormahan nyo ngayon, Mama.
Ano ba si Bobby? Ano yan?
Mayang babi mo, sugarol.
Gusto mong ipamukha sa akin na hindi ako karapat-dapat na magkaroon ng kasama sa buhay.
Ano? Pwede ka ba?
Oo.
Yes! Umiikot ang paningin ko.
Dahan-dahan lang.
Naku, Ma'am, may makakasabay ka na mag-jogging.
Gusto niyo bang itanim ko kayo sa paso?
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken and China's top foreign policy official Wang Yi will meet at the sidelines of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations talks in Indonesia. This is amid tensions between the world's two largest economies soaring in the recent years due to China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. U.S. Treasury Chief Janet Yellen previously visited Beijing last week, reaffirming the two nations' role in the stability of the global market. Washington, however, has not achieved its objective of resuming dialogue with the Chinese military. Political analysts say the meetings are part of U.S.'s efforts to pave the way for a conference between President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping later in the year.
ASEAN foreign ministers were still working for a united position on the Myanmar crisis. This comes a day after the bloc's ministerial meeting ended in Indonesia, where ministers had still not reached agreement on a communique. A Southeast Asian diplomat said a joint text was still being worked out and would come later. They would not comment on why the final document was taking so long. Indonesia has said any other efforts must support ASEAN's existing five-point peace plan to end the violence and renew talks. Myanmar has been ravaged by deadly violence since a military coup ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's government in February 2021. But more than 2 years after the coup, the divided 10-member bloc's peace efforts remain fruitless as the junta ignores international criticism and refuses to engage with its opponents.
Official data shows that Chinese exports fell more than expected in the past month, putting pressure on Beijing to roll out more stimulus measures to kickstart the flagging recovery. Based on the data released by the General Administration of Customs, their 12.4% drop was larger than the 10% drop predicted by Bloomberg economists. As the world's second-largest economy, China is highly reliant on overseas shipments, but apart from a brief respite in March and April, their demand in key markets has been dwindling. Imports also dipped 6.8% during the same period, which is highly indicative of the cooling of domestic buying power for foreign products, which has made the inflation plateau more apparent and has forced the central bank to ease up on their monetary policies. Customs spokesman Liu Daliang also attributes this to outside forces having a direct impact on the Chinese market, with Beijing currently in a trade deadlock with the United States in the aspect of trade and technology. The threat of recession in the United States and Europe has led to lukewarm demand for Chinese products, and weak economic data in various developed countries put more pressure on Chinese exports in the coming months.
A diplomatic standoff over disputes about the new Chinese embassy in the United Kingdom strains relations between both countries. The Chinese government expresses frustration over the denied planning permission for their embassy. Britain fears its plans to rebuild its own embassy in Beijing is also in jeopardy from this issue. This embassy spat hinders British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's attempt to establish a balanced approach to China. China's plan for a 700,000 square foot embassy faces opposition from local elected councillors due to security and resident impact concerns. The unresolved issue threatens London's foreign direct investment, as China is the second largest investor to the UK. On Thursday, Ukraine had downed 20 Russian drones and 2 cruise missiles in an overnight attack that wounded at least 4 in the capital of Kyiv. The 20 Iran-made Shahid attack drones were destroyed mainly in the Kyiv region. The drones had entered the capital from different directions, where air defenses had destroyed about a dozen in the city's airspace. Ukrainian air defenses also destroyed 2 Caliber cruise missiles during the night. It's said an Iskander-M ballistic missile had also been launched from Crimea, a southern peninsula annexed by Russia in 2014. Information was still being clarified regarding the missile launch.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed a commitment by G7 nations to support Ukraine, insisting on a step forward in the road of Kyiv eventually joining NATO. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg stressed the importance of the progress he said Ukraine had made at the two-day summit. He noted that Zelensky had joined NATO leaders at an inaugural meeting of the Ukraine-NATO Council. Zelensky asserts that the promises from the Western leaders amounted to a significant security victory that he could take home to Kyiv. Despite this, he expressed his preference for NATO to agree on a firm timetable for Ukraine to join the bloc once peace has been restored to their region. NATO leaders agree that Ukraine could join the alliance once certain conditions are met, and U.S. and German officials in Vilnius made it clear that these would include Kyiv carrying out reforms to protect democracy and the rule of law by seeking an end to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The Russian military gains ground near the Kremenaya-Savatovo line. Russian forces are reclaiming the Luhansk region after recently losing full control of it. Drones and tanks have forced Ukrainian troops to hide in trenches, hampering Ukraine's counteroffensive. Moscow claims that their forces have successfully countered at least 70 Ukrainian attacks in Luhansk since last week. They further claim to have destroyed 54 armored vehicles, 13 tanks, and eliminated 2,600 Ukrainian troops. United States President Joe Biden arrives in Finland for a meeting with Finnish President Sauli Niinisto. The last U.S. presidential visit to Helsinki was 5 years ago when former U.S. President Donald Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. President Biden will also meet with other Nordic prime ministers. The Nordic countries include Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. The discussions will focus on cooperation between the Nordic countries and the U.S. on security and environmental matters. Biden will conclude his European tour after this final stop in Finland.
Global finance chiefs are set to meet in India to discuss increasing loans to developing nations from multilateral institutions and reform the international debt architecture and regulations on cryptocurrency trade. The finance ministers and central bank governors from the group of 20 nations will also discuss a multilateral agreement on taxing conglomerates with cross-border operations. The meeting in Gandhinagar, the capital of the western state of Gujarat, will be the third finance chiefs meeting under India's G20 presidency and will set the tone for a leaders' summit in New Delhi. The meeting is likely to be attended by most senior Treasury officials from G20 member nations, including U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, the World Bank's newly appointed president Ajay Banga, and the International Monetary Fund's managing director Kristalina Georgieva. India will try to keep the focus of member nations on discussing issues of debt and other economic problems and not push for any consensus on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The independent panel, headed by economists Lawrence Summers and N.K. Singh, was commissioned by the G20 to propose reforms to multilateral development banks with a focus on increasing funding for sustainable development goals and climate change.
Up next, India's West Bengal state political violence claims 6 lives. President Macron receives a severed finger at Élysée Palace. Please don't go away. Mata ng Agila International will be back with more global news.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders.
Ang Best Public Affairs Program. And the star goes to Open for Business Net 25.
It is a signal to the world that we are open for business.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos. Every Sunday, 9 p.m.
Hi guys, this is Piolo Pascual. Catch me on Magandang Araw on Net 25.
Magandang araw, magandang araw.
Hi everyone, Regina Latina here. Abangan nyo naman this Saturday sa Oh No, It's Hero. Hero only sa Net 25.
Oh no! It's Hero only! Sunday 25!
My ever dearest bossmate.
Imported yata yung letter sender natin.
My name is Vinti Malabrigo.
Ang ating employee of the month ay si... Minty Malabrigo! What is this coffee?
Sorry po, Miss Minty.
Are you insulting my taste buds? Magkakaho na kayo!
Love, Bosleng, and Tali. Tuwing linggo, alas 6 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
Thailand's Prime Minister hopeful Pita Limjaroenrat is bracing for a critical test of his amassed political clout as Parliament convenes for a high-stakes vote. The 42-year-old leader of surprise election winners Move Forward was the only candidate nominated, but this vote served as a test of unity for his 8-party alliance. Pita's determination to pursue Move Forward's progressive, anti-establishment agenda puts him at odds with powerful conservatives and old money families that have ruled a majority of Thailand for decades. The Electoral Commission has been investigating whether Pita was unfit to register as a parliamentary candidate because of his ownership of shares in a media firm, which is prohibited under election rules.
นี้ผมยังมีคุณสมบัติสมบูรณ์แบบทุกประการและด้วยความชอบธรรมครับนะครับที่ตัวผมเองก็ยังไม่รู้เลยครับว่าข้อกล่าวหาคืออะไรเห็นแต่มติต้องผ่านสื่อมวลชนยังไม่รู้เลยว่าสงสัยในประเด็นไหนแล้วหลักการที่บอกว่าสมมติฐานไว้ว่าบริสุทธิ์ไปก่อน presumption of innocence เข้าใจว่า
The Liberal Move Forward and its alliance partner Pheu Thai outfought the conservative pro-military parties in the May 14 election, seen widely as a rejection of nearly a decade of the government backed by the royalist military. He faces a significant challenge in securing the backing of more than half of the 749-member bicameral parliament.
ก็เสียงข้างมากรวบรวมเสียงข้างมากได้อันดับหนึ่งจัดตั้งได้ก็เป็นนายกรัฐมนตรีไปนะครับแต่ว่าถ้าท่านไม่ได้แล้วท่านจะมาบอกว่าบ้านเมืองจะเป็นอย่างเอาประชาชนเป็นตัวประกันเนี่ยผมคิดว่ามันไม่ควรนะครับ
His alliance controls 312 seats, but to get the required 375 votes, he needs support from some of the 249 members of the conservative-leaning Upper House Senate, which was mostly appointed by the military. Pita ran unopposed in the vote, but failed to gain a majority of the 749-member parliament. Only 324 people supported him, including 13 senators, while 182 voted against. A further 199 abstained. The alliance has had disagreements in recent weeks, and Pita's failure to secure the required number of seats signifies a major blow dealt to his newly formed coalition, and now they must decide whether to back him again in another vote slated for July 19.
The Black Lives Matter BLM movement reaches a significant milestone as it commemorates 10 years since its establishment in 2013. The movement has grown to become a powerful force in politics and law enforcement reform. Activists and organizations have planned in-person and virtual events to mark the occasion. They also call for the defunding of police departments and subsequent reinvestment in disproportionately affected Black communities. An event will take place in Los Angeles with notable speakers like the mother of Trayvon Martin, who was the original victim that sparked the creation of the Black Lives Matter movement.
A tornado forms near Chicago O'Hare Airport, canceling hundreds of flights. Passengers are advised to take shelter due to inclement weather. National Weather Service in Chicago confirms the tornado touching down at 7 in the evening. They had issued 2 tornado warnings to warn people around the affected area. The flight tracking service FlightAware reports that 173 passenger departing flights were canceled and more than 500 were delayed. Senior meteorologist Brett Broadhart and National Weather Service confirmed that there were multiple tornadoes forming across Chicago. He added that the overall report of casualties would take a few days.
Voting turned deadly in India's West Bengal state. At least 19 people died during the local elections over the weekend. Timon Lee has more details.
Local media report election-related clashes with police on Wednesday resulting in 6 deaths as vote counting continued. Several police officers suffered injuries. Police stood guard outside the homes of the victims to protect family members. Extra security forces will remain in the state for at least 10 days after the results are announced. Relatives gathered Wednesday to mourn the dead. Widespread clashes between members of different political parties in the state are commonplace. Elections in West Bengal have had a long history of violence. Since June 8th, when voting began at the row polls, the death toll from political violence has reached 48. Timon Lee for Madanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Anti-government protests in Kenya have claimed at least 6 lives. On Wednesday, demonstrators rallied against the high cost of living and tax hikes. Rani Bayuga tells us more.
The protests, which have been banned by Kenyan government, took place in several cities across the country. Some protesters ended up in hospital with serious injuries, including gunshot wounds after clashing with police. In the capital of Nairobi, police tear gassed more than 50 school children. Businesses in the city closed down during the violence. The protesters say life in Kenya is getting harder. They say they can't afford food, and adding they have little hope that economic conditions will improve. The government has hiked taxes on food, fuel, and money transfers. It says the money will help create jobs and reduce public borrowing. The opposition says the protests will continue until the tax increases are reversed. Rani Bayuga for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The death toll from monsoon rains in India has risen to 66. The rains have created chaos in the country's north, near the Himalayas. Macy Membrere has more details.
Scores of foreign tourists have been stranded in the Himalayas after floods washed out roads to the region. Rescue teams managed to get 40 tourists from Malaysia and Russia to safety. On Wednesday, crews began repairing the damage and some traffic has resumed. Floods and landslides have washed away vehicles, demolished buildings, and swept away bridges. The Indian capital, New Delhi, remains on high alert for flooding. Monsoons bring about 80% of the country's annual rainfall. It is vital for agriculture and the livelihoods of millions of farmers, but it also brings death and destruction every year from landslides and flooding. Experts say climate change is increasing the frequency and severity of monsoons. Macy Membrere for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A severed finger has been sent with a letter to French President Emmanuel Macron. On Thursday, French prosecutors opened an investigation after the discovery of a severed fingertip in a letter addressed to the Élysée Palace. The gruesome find was reported by staff working for President Emmanuel Macron, with police called to investigate. The fingertip is believed to belong to the sender of the letter, who suffers from psychiatric problems. Between 1 to 1,500 emails and letters are addressed to Macron daily, and they are monitored and scanned by a 70-man team working from offices away from the main Élysée Palace in central Paris. Macron is known to monitor them as an insight into public opinion and occasionally responds with handwritten messages. His office declined to comment on the incident.
The World Health Organization launches a new online platform. It helps users find practical advice in accessing digital technologies to support tuberculosis care worldwide. Rosel Feria tells us more.
The WHO Global Tuberculosis Program introduces its newest platform featuring digital resources on ending TB. The new platform on tuberculosis care provides easy access to guidelines and job aids developed by the health agency and its technical partners. It provides links to care literature and country examples. The content is organized around 4 functions: person-centered care, program management, surveillance and monitoring, and e-learning. WHO says the online platform will be updated regularly with the most recent guidance and tools. Director of WHO's Global Tuberculosis Program, Dr. Teresa Casayeva, says digital health is rapidly evolving and the opportunities provided by new developments, such as artificial intelligence, need to be actively exploited. In Washington, D.C., Rosel Feria for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In Colombia, deforestation has been reduced by 29% in 2022. This, according to the country's environment minister, is a number they cannot be satisfied with. Sean Davila reports.
Colombia reports that between the years of 2021 and 2022, deforestation has reduced by close to 30%. Colombia is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. The United Nations says that the country has not recorded a similar figure since 2013. That was when over 116,000 hectares of trees were logged. In spite of what may be considered good news, Environment Minister Susana Mohammed says one cannot rest on one's laurels. She warns that historically, there are years when it is reduced and then the trend goes upwards. At present, the Amazon continues to be the region with the most forests destroyed. She mentions a major obstacle that the Amazon rainforest faces: transnational crime. Transnational crime involves drug trafficking, money laundering, and wildlife trafficking. She says it is very powerful. Mohammed mentions that some of the key points of the Belém Summit in Brazil in early August include renewing the Amazon rainforest and seeing how strategic cooperation could be deepened in terms of criminal investigation. Sean Davila for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, Elon Musk launches a new AI company. Find out the winners for this year's EPSIs. And Succession leads Emmys with 27 nominations. Catch the latest in business, sports, tech, and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will be back.
dumating ang taong masasabi mong tunay na kaibigan.
Yep! At kapag siya'y natagpuan na, huwag mo nang pakawalan.
Ang tunay na kaibigan, laging nandyan kahit kailan.
Handang gawin ang lahat. Maging happy ka lang.
Gagawin ang April Song! Para sa'yo, para sa pamilya, at para sa bayan.
Tulad na lang ng inyong mga bagong kaibigan.
Tuwing umaga,
love,
Tunipet,
and everything!
Lunes hanggang Biyernes,
6:30 ng umaga
sa Net 25! Let's net together! Love Tunipet and everything! Tunipet and everything! Love Tunipet! Love Tunipet and
PGA officials are fighting for CEO Greg Norman to be ousted as CEO and commissioner of Live Golf. This news comes in light of a side deal between the PGA and Saudi PIF, along with negotiations on the DP World Tour. The documents released by the U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations have shed light on several factors of the merger. During the congressional hearing about the new merger between the PGA Tour and the PIF, Senator Richard Blumenthal stated that there was a side agreement between both parties to push Greg Norman out of the merger. Greg Norman, despite being the CEO of Live Golf, did not find out about the shocking deal until moments before a joint statement was prepared to be made. Further details share that Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods assuming ownership of Live Golf teams. Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, appeals its loss to Microsoft in Activision Blizzard case. This is after the federal judge dismisses the preliminary injunction request from the regulator. Federal Judge Corley rules out that FTC has not shown a likelihood that it will prevail on its claim. As part of the regulator's appeal to the case, FTC needs the Ninth Circuit Court to issue an emergency stay to extend the existing temporary restraining order that will be due on Friday, 11:59 p.m. Meanwhile, Microsoft has still issues with the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority, or CMA. Both parties recently announced they had agreed on or to postpone their legal battles to negotiate last Tuesday. Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX and owner of Twitter, announced his new AI company called XAI with the goal, as the company puts it, to understand the true nature of the universe. Carl Gonzaga has the details.
Elon, do you have any comment? Elon, how will you be defending the charge?
Welcome. Great to have both of you.
As of course, but it's both create the future, and predict a healthy diet, and it's still going to live for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks.
Very inspiring and futuristic, very informative dialogue. It seems it's the typical dialogue between the Earth and the Mars.
In the 2023 Wimbledon, everybody is anticipating the championship round as the semi-final round is coming up next. In other sports news, we'll be finding out who the winners are for this year's ESPYs. Catherine Ortula has the score.
For the women's singles, another upset has taken place as Tunisian Ons Jabeur defeated the defending champion Elena Rybakina. Rybakina exited the quarterfinals after Jabeur handed her a 6-7, 6-4, and 6-1 defeat. The tables have turned as Jabeur knocks out Rybakina to avenge her last year's finals defeat. Jabeur will now face Belarusian Arina Sabalenka in the semi-final round after defeating American Madison Keys. The world number 2 Sabalenka put together a near-perfect performance with a 6-2 and 6-4 win over Keys. She overcame Keys in straight sets to reach the Wimbledon semis for just the second time in her career. For the men's singles, Daniil Medvedev closes out Wimbledon debutant Christopher Eubanks' astonishing SW19 adventure as he defeated him in a 5-set thriller 6-4, 1-6, 4-6, 7-6, and 6-1. Medvedev will now set up a clash with the number 1 Carlos Alcaraz in the semi-finals. This is after Alcaraz has defeated Denmark's Olga Rune in 3 sets, 7-6, 6-4, and 6-4. In a clash between two 20-year-olds, Alcaraz has triumphed over Rune to what has been an entertaining match that lasted for 2 hours and 20 minutes. The Excellence in Sports Performance Yearly Award, or the ESPYs, is an annual celebration to recognize the best teams, players, and moments in the world of sports. And for this year, witness athletes who have been honored and got an award this past year. In the NBA, the Denver Nuggets teammates Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray have been awarded Best NBA Player for Jokic, while Best Comeback Athlete for Murray. LeBron James has also been awarded for Best Record-Breaking Performance for surpassing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for NBA all-time scoring record. Lionel Messi's performance in leading Argentina in the World Cup final has been awarded for Best Championship Performance. In other sports, Max Verstappen has been named the best driver for Formula One. Shohei Showtime Ohtani of the LA Angels has been named Best Major League Baseball Player, while Novak Djokovic was named as Best Tennis Player. Meanwhile, American skier Mikaela Shiffrin has been named Best Female Athlete, while the Kansas City Chiefs bagged 2 major awards as the Chiefs named Best Team and their quarterback Patrick Mahomes as Best Male Athlete. Catherine Ortula, reporting for sports and Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
HBO Succession dominates the 75th Emmy Awards with 27 nominations. Stephanie Mayo has the scoop.
On Wednesday, the nominations for the 75th Emmy Awards were announced with HBO Succession leading the field with 27 nominations. The 2-time Outstanding Drama Series winner, Succession, about a cutthroat media mogul, has wrapped its 4-season run this year, but gained 2 more nominations than last year. Fellow HBO shows The White Lotus and The Last of Us follow the top list of nominations with 24 and 23 nods respectively, while Apple TV's 2-time defending comedy series champion Ted Lasso earning the 4th spot with 21 nominations. Succession also made Emmy history by becoming the first series to have 3 actors from the same show simultaneously receive a nomination in the lead actor category: Brian Cox, Kieran Culkin, and Jeremy Strong. Meanwhile, Jenna Ortega of Netflix Wednesday was nominated for Best Lead Actress in a Comedy Series, the first Latina to be nominated in the category since America Ferrera in 2008. The Emmys is set to go live in September. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Czech French writer Milan Kundera, author of The Unbearable Lightness of Being, dies at 94. According to the Milan Kundera Library, he died in his Paris apartment after his battle with a prolonged illness. The novelist, poet, and essayist lived in France since his emigration from communist-ruled Czechoslovakia in 1975. He was known for dark, provocative novels dealing with human condition. The celebrated writer mixed his work with satire, a reflection of his experience of being stripped of his Czech nationality for dissent. French Culture Minister Rima Abdul Malak said in a tweet that she was deeply saddened by his death. She added, "With him, one of the greatest voices in European literature died."
And it's already Thursday.
Thursday.
So quick, right? To send you off tonight, here's a quote from American industrialist and business magnate Henry Ford. Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success.
You know, sometimes with our pride, it's hard to work together, but you're really more productive when you work hand in hand.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. That's why there's a famous saying now, better together.
Better together.
Better together.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
And I am Nina Richie Elago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.